right. Well, this is Jeff Trapp here with the Jeff Trapp Podcast, and I'm so glad that you've decided to join us today. And this is new for us. This is our first episode where we're going to have a guest on our podcast, and I'm excited to introduce Tom Woolley with Today Cybersecurity. I've known Tom for about 5 years now. We first met at an accounting conference. And we hit it off, and now we're able to work together on some projects, and it's a lot of fun. So welcome to the show, Tom.
Thanks, Jeff. It's exciting to be here.
So what I want to do today is I know that you're in the industry of cybersecurity, but I wanted to just kind of get your background and find out how you decided to get into this industry.
Yeah, so I am corporate at heart for about 20 years. I went from, the usual graduate and then head to bachelor's degree in technology and accounting, and then started working for oil and gas and pharmaceuticals throughout my professional career. Went back and got my master's in business in accounting because I really enjoyed that and I wanted to grow in that aspect. And then, I really just decided that I had all these things that I wanted to do business-wise and different ideas. And I actually was not that familiar with small business or running my own firm. But like most entrepreneurs, I went insane and started my own firm anyways. And then, we got hit with the pandemic just like everybody else did. And there was a unique set of challenges that went along with that. Now, we were working with a lot of clients remotely anyways. Our team was all on site though. So we decided to send everybody home, rework everything, grab your computer, take it with you. And, in that chaos, we kind of had to figure out the whole cybersecurity thing. How do we protect our client data while working remote? How do we share information? How do we collaborate and keep everybody safe? And during that process, I thought, man, this is really complicated. It feels more complicated than it should. And so being the serial entrepreneur that I'm always trying not to be, so I can stay focused on one thing, I decided to go ahead and start a cybersecurity company and help other accountants with making that transition as well. And then not long after, the FTC came out with the FTC Safeguard Rule that really increased what the requirements are for us. And that made me take the head-on plunge into helping accountants and CPAs and EAs really tackle that challenge and help their clients. So it was kind of an evolution that led me here.
Yeah. So you mentioned these FTC safeguard rules, and I know that the IRS has some rules regarding some regulations for accountants when it comes to protecting clients and client data. Can you explain a little bit more about that? Just because I think a lot of our listeners don't know about this.
Yeah, absolutely. So you're right. The IRS has the Graham-Bliley Act, and they've got IRS publication 4557, which we already know about and have to be compliant with. But they decided to majorly expand on that with the FTC Safeguards Rule. And those two government entities, they're kind of working together to protect citizens from cyber attacks that are really taking off this year. So, things have changed. Cyber attacks are way up, and insurance companies are really driving the push to lock down and protect customer information. So for those that are not interested with the FTC Safeguard Rule, it focuses around software protections, protecting what they call personal identifiable information, PII. And it also has a heavy emphasis on internal training and continuing education. and third-party oversight and audit. So it brings to the accounting industry a lot of what we're used to holding our own clients for accountable for, right? Is you have to do everything by the book, and you got to be audited or prepared to be audited by the IRS, or have that oversight in place. And now they've kind of flipped the script on us, and we have to have the auditing party in place and be ready at all times. So, you know, it's really being driven by the insurance companies, and it's being driven by the current state of just data information being out there and being so vulnerable.
And, you know, from your perspective, you know, are accountants doing a good job adhering to these rules? You know, are there possible questions that our listeners could ask their current accountants to make sure that their data is protected?
Yeah, that's a great question. So according to the FTC and the IRS, compliance is at less than 20%, which they're kind of freaking out about right now. So the deadline was extended 6 months to June 9th of this year, but they're still finding that a lot of accountants are struggling to find a compliance company, and they're struggling to become compliant because, you know, there's multiple softwares that have to be installed, and the team training when there's all of these deadlines going on has been a real challenge. So there's also a gap in expertise. There's not a lot of cybersecurity trained individuals out in the workforce right now, and there's a lot of new programs going into place to increase the number of cybersecurity professionals that are out there, but it's just going to take time, and the demand hit all at once. So, you know, we worked with your company. You guys jumped on board before the deadline, got all of your data encrypted, got all of your clients' information secured and locked down. And I would say for business owners out there that want to ask their accountant this question, it needs to be brought up. Are you FTC Safeguard compliant? And not just that, but ask who their compliance company is, because it is something that has to be overseen by a third party, and they should be ready to talk about that. So it's really critical that business owners understand who's protecting their data. Is it staying stateside? Is it going overseas? If it is going overseas, can it be stolen or manipulated or used? And, you know, those are all things that have to be taken care of, and, you know, what am I saying? Kind of worked out in a scenario whenever you're looking at how the firm works. How does it handle their data? Everybody's a little bit different. So you got to make sure those safeguards are in place, and protect yourself. Ask your accountant how they're handling the safeguards.
Yeah, that's great advice. I mean, that's really scary that less than 20% of all accounting firms are complying with these standards. You know, do you have any horror stories or things that you're seeing out there with accountants who don't comply?
Yeah, you know, being having an accounting firm and being in the cybersecurity space is unique. So I get to see all of the hacks that are going on, all of the cyber attacks kind of in advance of when they hit the news. But that's the crazy thing, Jeff, is a lot of accountants, they're big enough to be hacked because they're sitting on a treasure trove of information as far as the black market's concerned. You know, a 1040 tax return has everything you need for identity theft on it for the entire family, including kids, which are really valuable Social Security number wise, because that credit's not going to be used for a long time. And so the hackers, they're getting really clever. They know that they can spy on an accountant's data, their email accounts, and watch it for about a year. The average hack goes on for 367 days. And that number is not a coincidence. They want to make sure they grab the entire tax season. They want to get all of those tax returns and amendments, and then they use that information strategically to file somebody's tax return ahead of time. We hear so many horror stories about accountants who half their book of business or more has had a fraudulent tax return filed because the entire firm has been compromised. And then there's a new wave of attacks going on. So I spoke recently at an event and was kind of privy to some conversations from other accountants where they are receiving ransomware attacks. So at the end of this year-long, I feel like I'm telling a true crime story. At the end of this year-long kind of spying period on the firm, they upload ransomware. What the ransomware does is it encrypts all of their files, it locks their computers, and it pops up this big red menacing looking box that says, we have all your data, here's who we are, and you are going to send us $50, $75, $100,000 in Bitcoin to this wallet in 48 hours, or we are going to tell your clients, we're going to tell the IRS, and we're going to tell the FTC. So they've decided that instead of just stealing data and making an empty threat, they're going to go ahead and report to your clients and those regulating bodies and shut you down. So, we're really seeing an escalation from passive ransomware to malicious intent with these cyber terrorists. And the industry has become commoditized. How many different SaaS applications do you have that you operate in the cloud right now?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure accountants have a ton. I know our firm uses a lot of different cloud accounts, and I think about just yesterday, Google had an issue. Like all of the apps and a lot of the data is on Google, and it's scary to think about that these firms aren't protected and their client data is getting out there. I mean, what do you kind of see in the future in terms of cybersecurity? Is this going to put a lot of firms out of business? What do you predict?
I think it's going to be a big burden on the industry, both as software and training requirements, but also it's changing the barrier to entry becoming a firm. So rather than being a single bookkeeper telling everybody on Facebook, hey, I'm suddenly in business, these business owners are going to be responsible for checking the credentials. Are they in their credentials like you normally do? Are they qualified? But now we're going into, are they insured? And then we're going into, what are they doing with my private data? And with that 7-year requirement, I have to hold on to stuff for 7 years. You have to hold on to stuff for 7 years. So as a business owner, I need to know, does my accountant have that stuff encrypted and secured for 7 years? Or is it on some Google Drive somewhere that everybody forgot about? Mm-hmm. So it's going to massively impact the accounting field. It's going to impact how business owners are finding and choosing their accountants. And I hate to say it, but it's going to make accounting more expensive, where the cost of everything's going up. But these softwares, they're enterprise level, they're enterprise grade, they're not cheap. Cybersecurity professionals start at $125,000 a year, and they're not cheap. Oh, that's not cheap. So it is going to change the industry a lot. It's going to raise that barrier of entry. And I think we're going to see a lot of the smaller accounting firms who are not able to do all of this due diligence, who can't carry the insurance, who can't support the software. They're going to start consolidating, and we're going to see them go out of business. We're going to see them go work for other firms like your own.
Yeah. Wow, that's just crazy that this is all going to happen over here over the next several years. You talk a lot about the accounting industry, and there's a lot of different types of businesses out there that probably face cybersecurity threats. Do you work in any other industries, or can you tell us a little bit about that?
Actually, we are FTC Safeguard specialists. I do training, awareness, and I really focus on accounting firms only. So there are other cybersecurity firms that are helping other industries that are definitely more vulnerable. Just in any industry, they're vulnerable. But specifically under the FTC Safeguard Rule, it's not just applicable to accountants. It's anyone who has that personally identifiable information. So anyone who collects a credit card, anyone who has personal information about their clients. So it's banks, it's financial companies, it's investors, it's loan originators, it's mortgage companies. Our specialty is accountants. That's who we work with. There's a lot of other niche specifics out there that can work with those other industries, but I like to stay really focused on what I know best. Running an accounting firm, owning an accounting firm for 15 years, I know exactly what we need, and that's where I like to focus. But everybody's getting, I like to say that it's not if you're going to get hacked, it's when, because almost everybody's information is on the dark web, whether they got it from somewhere else or from you. And I don't know if you've been following the MGM hack, but it got pretty ugly, and they're a big company.
Yeah, and I read somewhere, I don't know if it's actually true, that Caesars got hacked, but they ended up paying the ransom. And
Well, if you saw what happened to your buddy down the street, it was still ongoing, wouldn't you?
yeah, possibly. I mean, there's a lot of money running through those casinos, right? So, for businesses just starting to consider, their cybersecurity strategy, where should they begin? What are good resources for folks that may not be in the accounting industry to find someone who's FTC compliant?
So I put together a guide for fully remote and hybrid or in office only, where we go through and I do a good, better, best comparison for the softwares that you would need all the way down the list, from malware scanner to encryption, to help smaller firms get jump started on the path to compliance. And then what we do is every conversation starts with this, what we call a CSRA. It's a cybersecurity risk assessment. The FTC requires it to be done annually anyways, but for any of your listeners, we can do a free CSRA. All they have to do is go to our website and put in their name, email address, phone number. We'll reach out and get them booked on that. But really, that's the first thing that needs to happen, and the first conversation that needs to happen whenever firms are looking to get compliant. If they're calling their local IT and they just quote a price over the phone, or they put them on some generic plan without first understanding what their situation is, then they really don't know how to protect the systems if they've never seen it before. And that's really the educational piece that we've been working on here, is moving accountants through the safeguard certification process, in just starting with the first requirement there.
Yeah, and like accounting, I know there's a lot of changes that happen every single year, and I'm sure there's new threats that come out in the world of cybersecurity. So how do you stay up to date, on things?
I go to a lot of these conferences. So the cybersecurity industry loves their conferences. We go to HackCon every year. We go to multiple, a lot of our software vendors actually do their own conferences where other professionals around the country can come in and exchange and share ideas. But it is a multi-pronged approach, and it's complicated. So we have to stay up to date through what other people are looking at, our vendors, through different security holes and reports that they've discovered, like the 0 day for Google Chrome that you were just talking about. When stuff like that hits, it hits fast, and we have to be ready to patch and update quickly because the cyber terrorists are working 24/7 to exploit those. So we have to move fast. The other thing is what we call a tabletop game. So I don't think I've ever mentioned this to you, but we run what's called threat scenarios, where my team and I will actually sit around a table and we have this deck of cards that has, I don't know, have you ever played Cards Against Humanity?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's similar to that, right? Where you pull up certain threats and you discuss if someone attacked our infrastructure or the infrastructure that we've designed for clients as our process, what would happen with this attack? So we run these tabletop games for different scenarios to kind of flesh out, is there a vector of attack or some sort of vulnerability that's out there that we're not aware of? And then if we find something, which is constantly evolving, so there's always some threat, some new software that or new patch that opens up another hole in security somewhere, then we have to change our own process, and we roll that patch out to all of our accountants at the same time. I enjoy the tabletop games.
Yeah. Well, that'd be, it takes something that is digital and really makes it physical, and you've got to brainstorm and think through that process. And speaking of kind of the future and brainstorming a little bit here, the big thing right now, the big buzz is AI. How is AI going to change the cybersecurity industry? How is that going to be regulated? What are things that we need to be looking out for?
Yeah, so AI is going to change every industry, Jeff, and cyber threats is no different. So there's a saying in the industry on my side that when the hackers learn, or scammers, hackers, whatever you want to call them, when they learn to spell or use grammar, we're screwed. Well, they don't have to anymore because ChatGPT will write all of their spam or phishing emails for them now. So we're fighting that on multiple fronts with training, education, and software, because the AI is helping them become so quick, so efficient, and so accurate that even Microsoft and Google's filters are struggling to keep up with what a phishing email looks like. We had some incidences last week where Microsoft's own security notification emails are going to quarantine with their own filters. So they can't get their own notifications through the system because the AI generated phishing emails are so good and so accurate that they're altering the detection algorithms where everything looks like a phishing email. So we're going to be playing catch up with AI. It's going to be an interesting next couple of years. I would say over the next 5 years, we are going to see a real emergence of AI combating hacking and cyber terrorism. We are using AI to detect virus, malware, and phishing scams. So as an example of that, your computers there at the Tax Planning Pros are actually protected with what we call an EDR, an endpoint detection response system, that has an AI built into it, where even if it's an unknown virus or an unknown malware, we can detect if it's doing malicious behavior, even if the virus or counter virus infrastructure has not identified it and classified it. So that's what we're really going to be looking at. And they've created their own ChatGPT, and they trained it on the dark web. It's called Dark GPT. And rather than feeding everything into it that OpenAI did, history books, math books, stuff like that, they fed it with dark web information.
Mm.
So we've got an actual dark GPT out there, and for $45 a month, you pay with Bitcoin, you can have access to it, and that's what they're doing. They're becoming commoditized, and AI is helping it happen. So it's going to be an interesting next couple of years.
Yeah, I mean, that's the real scary thing, with AI is that it's constantly learning and progressing 24/7. It doesn't take any time off. It doesn't go out to the kids' sporting events. It doesn't need to sleep.
Yeah.
It's always there learning, and it either learning for good or learning for bad in this case. Well, we've got a lot of entrepreneurs who listen to this podcast. And so I always like to close with a couple personal insights and reflections. But one thing I do want to ask you, in terms of just your entrepreneurial journey, what's maybe some good advice that you can give our listeners as they try to grow and scale and operate their businesses?
Yeah, whenever I've done a lot of coaching programs, I've done a lot of personal development through the years, because to be honest, when I first started my own business, I think I was really good at accounting, but I was not a good business owner or good at growing a business. And whenever I approach anything now, my secret sauce is to be of service. So I think of two things, Jeff. One is what I'm doing of service, is it valuable, and is it coming from a place of service? Am I really helping somebody, and is that authentic to me and who I am? And the other thing is this interesting? Is it intriguing? And is it something that really drives me to get out of bed in the morning? And I think that's important, because business owners are the hardest working people I have ever met. And there's no boundaries between personal and business. I know a lot of people say to separate your personal and business life, but it just doesn't happen for entrepreneurs. It's not, I think, because who we are is what we do. So there's no real wall or line there. So I focus on what motivates me the most to spend my time in that area, and really focus on self-improvement, and keep the what do you call it? Keep your tank filled, where you're motivated and you're not burning out all the time. So that's what does it for me. I think that's what helps a lot of us.
Yeah, I mean, and that's great advice. I mean, what I'm hearing Tom say is there's really isn't any work-life balance, but it doesn't matter. It's not really working when you love what you do and you're out there providing value to people. And when you're out there consistently providing value, eventually you'll get paid for that value. So thank you so much for sharing that, Tom. So as we close out today, where can our listeners find you and learn more about your products and services?
Yeah, we can be found at cybersecurity.com. And right on the front page is get a free consultation, where you'll jump on the phone with me. I like to start with a 15-minute call, just learn more about you and your business and what you do, and we'll take it from there. And for the business owners out there, talk to your accountant. Ask them how they're keeping your data safe, and encourage them to go to the website and get that CSRA process done. And don't be afraid to ask for the results.
Well, that's great, Tom. Thank you so much for sharing that and joining us today on the Jeff Trapp podcast. And I hope our listeners out there, I know they will find great value in this, as I have. And when it comes time, please like, share, and subscribe. And we'll talk to you again next week. Have a great one.